The purpose of this video is to review statistics and at the same time teach you a new skill, which is how to do statistics that we've been learning all semester on Excel. So as we go through this, we'll be reviewing a lot of the concepts that we've learned for descriptive statistics, for inferential statistics, and for doing regression analysis, but we'll be doing the calculations on Excel rather than doing them by hand. And after you finish the course, you will most likely be doing any statistics using computer tools like Excel. There's lots of other software that you can use as well, but Excel is fairly straightforward for most basic types of calculations that we needed to do in this class. So we're going to use Excel as an example, and this will help you review and prepare for the last midterm exam as well as for the final exam. At the same time, there will be one last required assignment through Canvas, and it will require you to go through and do a similar sort of example on Excel and submit that file. So this will give you a review for the exams as well as one last homework assignment that you'll need to complete on Canvas. So I'm going to walk through this on Excel fairly quickly. For those of you who are familiar with Excel, I'll try and go fast so that you don't get too bored. For those of you who are not familiar with Excel, you may need to pause the video and rewind and watch it again to catch on things that you might miss if you're not familiar with some of the details on Excel. But I'll go through it all and demonstrate it for you and show you how it works so that you can follow along as you do it. What I'd suggest you do is put this video in one window and then open up Excel, and I'll show you how to do that here in a minute, in another window so that you can follow along. In addition, there are some instructions that are written instructions for everything I'm going to be doing right now, and you can download those instructions. I'd recommend that you actually print them off if possible, and that way you can follow along on the written instructions as well as we go through all of this. So the first step is to download the data that we're going to be using, which is in this module 18.20 Business Schools Excel file. So if you click on that, it should bring it up down here, or at least that's the way it is on my computer. You double click on it, and that should open up Excel. And the first thing you'll need to do is to enable editing if you get this warning message, because we're going to be editing this file. Okay, so the data we're going to be using is data from a number of different business schools here, and there are 20 business schools listed. And what it shows is how much the students paid in tuition and fees at that school, and then how much salary and bonus the alumni on average made after they graduated. So these are two variables. We've got a sample of 20 schools. The schools are the elements in this case. The population would be all of the business schools in the country. And we have two variables, tuition fees and salary and bonus. The tuition fees and salary and bonus are both quantitative variables, and therefore we're going to be able to do regression analysis to see if there's a relationship between those two variables. But before we do that, we need to do some descriptive statistics, and we're going to start with that. However, when you run Excel to do statistics, there is something called the Data Analysis Tool Pack that you need to turn on, the Analysis Tool Pack. And by default, the City College Computer Lab computers do not have this turned on, and you need to turn it on every time you want to run statistics on those computers using Excel. If you have your own version of Excel on your own computer, you'll need to check to make sure this is turned on. You may never have had any reason to turn it on before, so I'll show you how to do that. So click on the File button up here in the corner, and then go down to the very bottom and click on Options. And in Excel Options, you'll see something down at the close to the bottom here called Add-ins. So click on Add-ins. And then down at the bottom of this page, you'll see something that says Manage. And the default, I believe, is Excel Add-ins. If it doesn't say Excel Add-ins, change it in the drop-down menu so it does say Excel Add-ins. And then click Go. And the one we want is the Analysis Tool Pack. So if that is blank, such as this, you need to check it. If it's already got a check mark in it, then you're fine. Just leave it as it is and click OK. All right, now the way you can tell that that worked is if you go up here to the Data menu, you'll see that there is something called data analysis over here in the analysis section. And if that is there, it means that you successfully turned on the analysis toolpath. Okay, so follow along as we go through this. I'd recommend, again, that you do this in another window as I do it, so that you can actually learn how to make it all happen rather than just watching me do it. And secondly, I would not recommend you try and do this on a phone. If you're on a phone right now, it's going to be difficult to follow along. So it'd be better to do this on a full-size screen, at least a tablet, but probably even a full-size monitor would be better. Okay, so we're going to start by calculating the mean, or the average. And let's go to cell A23 here and type in the word mean. And then click over on cell B23, and we're going to put in a formula to calculate the mean in Excel. So when you use formulas in Excel, you put an equal sign, and then the function we're going to use in Excel is called average. So type in the word average and an open parentheses. And the numbers we want to find the average of are all the tuition and fees numbers. So put your cursor into the first number, hold down the left mouse button and pull it all the way down to the bottom number and then release. And you'll see that it's plugged in B2 colon B21, which means it's all the numbers between B2 and B21. We're going to then put a close parentheses and hit enter, and it calculates the mean of the tuition and fees for us. Okay, now, if we want to calculate the mean for salary and bonus, we could come over here and do the same thing, but an easier way is to just highlight the tuition and fees mean, go down to the very corner down here until your cursor turns into a little plus sign, and then drag it over to the next one by clicking on the left mouse button and holding it down while you drag it across. And what it will do is duplicate that exact same formula over in the salary and bonus column. So now we've got the mean for salary and bonus as well. And when you do this on your exercise, what I'd like you to do is to highlight the answers of anything that I ask you to calculate. So the way we highlight it is we can put our cursor over here, click the mouse button, click the mouse button and pull it over like this. Oops, sorry. What we want to do is pull it over like this. Click on the left mouse button, hold it down and pull it over, and it will highlight all three of those cells. Then what you do is come up here to home and go to this little thing that's supposed to look like a paint bucket and click that, and it will fill in the color for you so that you can make sure that your answers are easy for me to find in your file that you're going to send to me when you do the practice exercise. Okay, so now we've done the mean. The next thing we want to try and do is the standard deviation. So let's type in standard deviation. And let's say we don't know what the function is for standard deviation. There is a little button up here called FX, and that's for inserting a function. So if you click on that, it will give you a whole bunch of different possibilities to choose from. We want to pick a statistical function, so we're going to come down to the categories and look up statistical, and then it'll give you all the statistical functions. And if you scroll down, you'll find in the S area, standard deviation. There's actually two different standard deviation formulas. Remember, there's one for the population where you divide by capital N, and another one for the sample, which you divide by little n minus 1. So you have to tell it which one this is. This one is obviously a sample because there's only 20 schools listed. So we're going to pick STDEV.S, standard deviation for a sample. Okay, you click OK. And then where it says number 1, we're going to put the numbers that we want to find the standard deviation for. And we click the up arrow, and once again, highlight all of the tuition and fees numbers, B2 to B21. When you're done, you click this little down arrow. And if we had other numbers, we could put that in, but we're done. We only have those numbers we want to find the standard deviation for. So we leave number 2 blank there. And it tells us what the answer is going to be. We click OK. And it fills in the answer right here. So that's the standard deviation for tuition and fees. If we want to do the standard deviation for salary and bonus, we put our mouse cursor here in the little corner again, and where it turns into a plus sign, and pull it across. And that's the standard deviation for salary and bonus. We can then highlight that, and if we want to make it a different color, we can do it like that. Okay, so that is the standard deviation. The next descriptive statistic we want to do is the range. And so let's go down to the next row here and type in range. And this one, I'm going to show you how to actually type in a formula. The range, remember, is the maximum value minus the minimum value. So we want to say equals MAX for max, and then an open parentheses, and we highlight all the tuition and fees numbers again, close parentheses. Then we want to subtract the minimum. So we can combine these functions together by doing a minus and then typing in min, open parentheses. And then we need to highlight all those exact same numbers again, close parentheses, and click or hit enter, and that tells us the range. And once again, we can find the range for salary and bonus by just copying it over, and then we can highlight it by going to the little paint bucket, and we'll just give it a different color here. Okay, so that's how we calculate the range. So this, what we've been doing so far is calculating descriptive statistics one at a time. But using the data analysis toolpath, there's actually a shortcut that will calculate all the descriptive statistics at one time. So if you come up to data and you click on data analysis here, it brings up a list of different analysis tools. And the one we want is descriptive statistics. So click on that and then click OK. And it's going to ask us, first of all, what is the input range? Now, one thing that's a little different this time is that when we identify the input range by clicking on this little up arrow, we do want to include the title, because when it calculates this one, it will actually include the title for us in the report that it gives us. So include the words tuition and fees in the first row, and then all the numbers as well. Click the little down arrow, and then we need to tell it that it is grouped in a column. So this is tuition is in a column, and there's a label in the first row. Now, the output range is where you want the results to go. So if we click on that and this little up arrow, let's put the output down in A27 right here, and click the down arrow to say we're done. Now, the default is it doesn't tell you anything. So that's kind of weird, but in order to make sure that it gives us something useful, we have to click on summary statistics. And then we also want to get the confidence level for the mean at 95%. And I'll explain what that means here in a few minutes. Okay, so click OK, and you see that what it did is it calculated a whole bunch of descriptive statistics for us in one transaction here, or one shot. So it tells us the mean, the same mean we had here before. I'm going to come back to standard error. It gives us the median, the standard deviation, same standard deviation we had. Some other things we didn't really talk about. Well, we did have the variance. We talked about that, just the square of the standard deviation. We have the kurtosis and skewness, which we don't need to worry about for our purposes. The range, which we already calculated. The minimum, maximum, the sum, the count. Count is just, you can say here, equals little n. That's the sample size. They call it count. And then the confidence level, 95%. I'll come back and talk about that in a second. Okay, so what does the standard error mean? The standard error is actually referring to the standard deviation of x bar. And the way we calculated the standard deviation of x bar is we took the standard deviation divided by the square root of the sample size. So the way we're going to do that to show where this number came from is put your cursor over here in C30, type in an equal sign, and then we want to take the standard deviation, so we can just click on B33 here, and it will fill that in for us. We then want to divide by the square root of the sample size. So divide by, and go down to B41, which is the sample size count. And then there's lots of ways to find the square root in Excel, but one way to do it is to just put a little caret, which is the shift of the 6 key on your computer, and then 0.5. What this means is we're taking that sample size number, little n, and taking it to the power of 0.5, which is the same thing as taking the square root. Okay, so we're now taking the standard deviation s divided by the square root of little n, and you see that it is 1453, which is the same standard error that they calculated here. Okay, now, let's say we want to do a confidence interval. Well, the confidence interval is going to use this standard error and multiply it by the t-statistic. So let's find out what the t-statistic is. First of all, let's come down here, and I'm going to put the cursor in C42, and we're going to figure out what t is for a 95% confidence interval. So come up and click on the little F of X, and we're already in statistical. We're going to scroll down and find T, or another way you can do it actually is you can go up to the search for a function and just type in T and go, and it's going to give us a whole bunch of things that have T's in them. The one that we're interested in is the inverse T for a two-tailed test. So the inverse says we're going to give it the probability, and we want it to tell us what T is. And we want it to be for a two-tailed test. So click on T, INV, 2T, and click OK. Now, the probability is that since we want a 95% confidence interval, we need to put alpha in here. A 95% confidence interval is where 1 minus alpha is equal to 0.95, which means that alpha is equal to 0.05. So we're going to put the probability as 0.05. For the degrees of freedom, we're going to want to take the count, which is B41, so we can type in B41 minus 1. Remember, the degrees of freedom for a T distribution is equal to, for this type of problem, with a single variable, n minus 1. So B41 minus 1, it tells us the degrees of freedom is going to be 19, and this is telling us right here what the T statistic is going to be. So we click OK, and that's our T statistic. Now, where does the margin of error come from? We need to multiply the T statistic times the standard deviation of X bar. So let's come over here to D42, type in an equal sign. Then we want to take the standard error and multiply it, which is the star key, times the T statistic here, which is right there in C42. We multiply those two numbers together, and we hit enter. It's 3,041. So what that means is what Excel calls the confidence level, 95% over here, is actually what we've been calling the margin of error. It's the same thing, 3,041.634 in this case. So if you want to, you can change this confidence level 95%, or you can put, just say, equals MOE. This is the margin of error. So if we want to actually do a confidence interval, then we can go down, let's go down to A44 and type in, we are 95% confident we are 95% confident that the population mean is in the interval. And then over here, we can say equals. And remember, the confidence interval is equal to the mean, sample mean, minus the margin of error, and the sample mean plus the margin of error. So before we do this, let's figure out what those two numbers are. Put the cursor in B43 here and do equals the mean, which is B29, minus B42, which is the margin of error. And let's put over here the upper bound, which would be equals the mean plus the margin of error, which is B42. Okay, so those gives us our two numbers. So now we say we are 95% confident that the population mean, I guess I should say mean instead of means, population mean is in the interval. And then over here, I'm going to put equals the lower level, B43, 2, and then over here, I'm going to put equals the upper level, which is C43. And if we want to, we can then change these to make them into dollars, since this variable is measured in dollars. The way you do that is go to the home, find the number format here, and the simple thing is just click on dollars. And we can do the same thing here for this one, and that will change it into dollars. So what we end up saying is we are 95% confident that the population mean is in the interval $31,069 to $37,152. Okay, let's highlight this with a different color. And that's our confidence interval. All right, so we found that the descriptive statistics for tuition and fees by itself here. Let's say we wanted to find the descriptive statistics for both variables at the same time. The way you can do that is to do a data analysis, descriptive statistics again, but this time for the input range, we're going to highlight both tuition and fees and salary and bonus along with the headers. And everything else that we have is already carried over for us, except we want to put the output someplace where it's not in the way of our other data. So let's put it up here in E1. Click the little down arrow, click OK. And what you see is it gives you a little table that shows you the descriptive statistics now for both variables at the same time. Now, the only thing about this is you notice like the sample variance here for the salary bonus is a number that doesn't fit in the cell. It put it into scientific notation, and we can't read all of the descriptions here. So what we're going to do is highlight these columns by holding down the mouse button and highlighting E, F, G, and H up here at the top in the columns, and then go to the very end, and it'll show into a little cross like this. You can stretch them out. Don't stretch them out too far, but stretch them out a little ways. And what you'll see is that it's expanded those columns so that you can now read all of the descriptions and read the numbers without them being in scientific notation. Okay, at this point, I'm going to pause and stop this video, and I'll start a new video to carry on where I left off. And so I'll talk to you again in a second.